people that have dated a celebrity, what was it like? So, not a date per se, but I had a nice quiet dinner with Samantha Fox in her hotel room in Toronto in the 80s. She was in town for a show and I was attached to her security detail. She asked me to eat with her because she didn't want to go out but hated eating alone. Sweet girl, kinda sad too. Lonely. Next story. I have a family friend who dated Daniel Radcliffe. I was 7 at the time they dated and a huge Harry Potter fan. I don't remember much aside from the fact that he was a really sweet guy. On my 8th birthday, my family friend told Daniel it was my birthday and he texted me a personal happy birthday message despite never having met me. Absolutely made it the best birthday ever. Next story. Not me, but my aunt dated Weird Al Yankovic when she was in her mid-20s. I wasn't alive back then, but my family tells me he was a genuinely funny person in a way you wouldn't very much expect. And I can't personally give any examples, but my dad and aunt have plenty of stories. One of my much older cousins actually had a signed guitar that Al played with in a live show. And you see, my aunt and Al met from my dad being a radio DJ as a teenager, and he met a lot of celebrities through that. Mostly 90s and early 2000s pop and country stars, but anyways, the station my dad worked at threw Weird Al a birthday party, and my aunt just happened to be there, and they ended up together for a decent amount of time. And every once in a while, Al will come into town to say hi to her. Even though they aren't together, they are still friends. And no, Al isn't cheating on his wife with my aunt. My aunt's a strong, married Christian, and I'm more than 100% sure she wouldn't do that. One of these days, I might end up meeting him, which I think would be pretty cool. So I want to throw in something that I heard about Weird Al one time. I don't know if he said it or if somebody dating him said it, but there was this movie and they needed specifically a celebrity cameo, like a celebrity had to come into the film and they'd be like, "Oh my God, it's you!" And they got Weird Al Yankovic. Well, apparently he would take dates to the film and then wear the same shirt that he was wearing in the film, and he wouldn't tell dates that he was in the movie. So you'd just be sitting there, and then the guy sitting next to you shows up on screen, which I thought was really funny. I think the only way you could maybe top that is if he said, "Hey, I have to go to the bathroom right before his scene." That would have been awesome. But anyway, next story. So, about 15 years ago, when the show The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie was popular, I made out with Paris Hilton at a nightclub in Baltimore. Essentially, they were filming them doing all sorts of random jobs around the country and staying with local families, all for the culture clash laughs. One of those families ended up being my friend and her family. So, being a close friend and a well-known admirer of Paris at the time, I was invited over and got to hang out with her and Nicole Richie a good amount while they were in town. Both of them were super sweet and a lot smarter than they played for the camera. As for Paris, she was a great kisser, and this story is always a hit with my friends. A few months later, her phone was hacked and her nudes were leaked. My number was in her phone book, and I got spammed with prank calls from 4chan or something. I imagine it was a lot worse for anyone who was actually famous, but anyhow, basically lost total contact after that, but still a fun story. Next story. So, one of my dad's close friends is Jim Carrey's first wife. Apparently, he turned into kind of a jerk when he got famous. Shocking, I know. And I remember a decade or so again when their grown kids band was trying to make a living with their music, she really wanted Jim to help them get bookings and stuff, and he was all like, "They need to make it on their own." Then he got a new girlfriend who told him to help his kid out, and then he did. First wife is still salty about that. Next story. So, I dated a girl who went out to be a sort of alternative adult star. We were both 17, 18, and she was really nice and we got on really well, but she was almost too obsessed with sex, even then. The second time we hung out, she gave me a BJ in a graveyard. Like, it really couldn't get more emo. And yes, it really was that good though. And then we broke up and kind of lost contact, and then I found out she was doing adult content. I think she only did it for a while, but it was certainly interesting when I found out. Alright, fun fact about your narrator, everybody. One of his friends from childhood, who I check in with from time to time, is an adult star himself. It's not a woman, don't get too excited. Should I say the name? It's Lil D. That's who it is. I'm friends with Lil D. And apparently, he got into the business because of me in a way, he told me. So that is, I have produced an adult star. Can you believe that? Anyway, next story. So, my mom dated Keanu Reeves back in high school. She broke up with him because he was too focused on his band with his friends at the time. Oh, if only. Next story. Not really a celebrity, and I did not know when we first met that she was semi-infamous? I had a brief relationship with a former adult star. She was a really nice woman, and when I was aware of her fame, it did not cause any problems. Every now and then, someone would go wide-eyed when they saw her, though. Men tended to just look away, and if they had friends, they would point her out to them. Women were much upfront. They would usually say things like, "I loved that scene with you and whatever guy," and they would usually say a particular position that was their favorite. That even happened when we were sitting together having lunch. Next story. Not dated for any of these stories, but semi-related. My mom went to a party with Janis Joplin. She said she was wild, funny, but crude, and smelled like she hadn't showered or brushed her teeth in weeks. Janis Joplin died not long afterwards. Then, I went to university in Westchester, PA. Seeing Bam Margera, Ryan Dunn, and crew was a relatively common sight. The first time I saw them was the same night I got the call from my parents telling me that my family dog was put down. Very old, very sick. My friend took me out drinking, and we ran into Bam and crew. Bam asked why I was down, and when I told him, he bought me drinks for the rest of the night. Then I went out bar hopping with them a few times after that. They were nice, but wild. Could never quite prepare myself for a night out with them. Ryan was as kind as could be and absolutely hilarious. Next story. Years ago at a hotel bar, I saw Alicia Cuthbert sent a bottle of vodka to her table. Upon learning it was me who sent it, she motioned me over to her table, promptly asked me if I was a drug dealer, told me I was dressed like a bum, and sent me back to my table with my bottle of vodka. That was my date with Alicia. I guess we just weren't meant to be. Next story. A friend of mine banged Matthew McConaughey. She's a costumer in Hollywood and was hanging out in the bar at Chateau Marmont when Matt comes up to her and says, "How about you and me walked 30 feet and get naked?" Her initial response was LOL no, but by the end of the night, her friends convinced her she had to do it. This was peak 2000s Matt, when he was ripped and constantly shirtless. So she went up to his room at the hotel, and they banged. Apparently, it was sweaty, mostly from behind, and he preferred to watch them, mostly him in the mirror. Same girl also dated McGee from NCIS, but apparently he was a total sweetheart. Next story. My college roommate and best friend became YouTube famous over the years. It has been really odd to watch it happen. I've been on trips with her, gone to conventions, see fans cry over her, and cry over me, which is even odder. And it's a weird balance of totally normal and totally abnormal. We go out to lunch sometimes, she'll get a fan or two that asks for a picture, but it has changed the way she views the world. Every time she leaves the house, it's stressful for her. She's always worried about how she's looking or acting. She's always been a sweet girl, so really doesn't have much to worry about, but she stresses so much about being her best self to everyone she meets because you never know who knows her and who doesn't. She's terrified of anyone having anything but a 100% positive experience with her. It can really wear on a person to not be able to let that go. And yes, YouTube famous may not be what OP had in mind, but I'm sure this applies elsewhere. The loss of anonymity is brought up often with celebrities, but I didn't really understand it till I saw her go through it myself. Next story. My wife briefly dated Louis C.K. back in 2012. She says it seems kind of awful to be famous. Anytime they went out to eat or were in public, they were just constantly interrupted or stared at. He came to her birthday party at some little bowling alley in Brooklyn, though, and that was pretty cool. The story that always sticks with me is that one day he went out and bought a $150,000 watch because he felt sad. Next story. A few years ago, I was getting on a flight to San Diego after my cousin's wedding. I was very hungover and judging people as I walked to my gate. I see this long-haired man stride by me in a purple button-down and think, who's this cupcake? Not a sexuality comment, just a shirt color comment. And as he walks by, I realize, holy crap, that's Fabio! A bit later, after getting a snack, my brazen and probably still drunken self saw him sitting at his gate and just sat down next to him. I look away, then right at him, and I say, "You're, Fabio." And he says coolly, "Yes, I am," and shakes my hand. We proceeded to talk for 30 minutes until he had to leave. He was so intelligent, discussed cancer therapies in depth, and I recall thinking, just nod and smile. Fabio is way smarter than you, just nod and smile. And before leaving, he asked for my number and texted me the next day for a date. Nothing ever came of it, but I still have his number in my phone. P.S. My dad followed up for weeks to make sure I wasn't dating the man on every romance novel cover. Next story. My friend's sister-in-law was out jogging when some other random dude came up and jogged with her and talked with her about random stuff like the movie being filmed nearby at the time for a bit. After a bit, he said, "Oh, by the way, I hope you like the movie. They were filming The Force Awakens," and she only realized later that it was Harrison Ford. Next story. Not me, but I have an obnoxiously attractive female coworker who is sort of obsessed with gaining an online following. Does the whole Insta-ho thing and is 100,000 followers, you know the deal. Well, a few years back, she tells us that she's dating a guy who plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs, says that she slept with him on the first date and is trying to lock him down, he's so rich, all the sketchy crap you would hear from someone that obsessive. My buddies and I, though, are diehard Leafs fans, so we're trying to get the name out of her. And for those of you who don't know, the NHL has farm teams in the AHL, where there are guys on NHL deals who aren't good enough for the NHL play. So technically, they've got NHL contracts, but they're getting paid their AHL salaries. Make sense? Well, turns out this girl was dating Garrett Sparks, who at the time was the AHL backup goalie. She was really having a difficult time understanding the technical difficulties of contracts and leagues until I pulled up his salary details and explained to her that this guy was making less money than I was. She ghosted him immediately. But fast forward a few years later, and Sparks has actually cracked the NHL, barely, and now she goes on about how she used to date an NHL player. She doesn't say the name anymore, though. Next story. Created a throwaway account for privacy reasons and not getting my ass sued for slander, but dated a recently well-known actress for about a year. There were definitely elements of it that were fun and elements that were not. She is noticeable, so when we went out on dates, she either always wanted to go out when no one was around, late at night or early in the morning, or if we went, when it was busy, so she probably got pulled aside once or twice for a photo. Really wasn't the end of the world, but she always made sure I wasn't in the photos because she enjoyed having some level of privacy in her life, which I tried to respect. The primary issue, however, was the whole drama she had to put on when she was dating me. When we started, she told me sleeping around was basically just part of the job. She wanders off with some guy and there's news articles, they're most likely true. So it was probably once every month she basically said I wouldn't hear from her for a couple of days. And then I see some report that she is now sleeping with X person. I put up with it for a while because she was okay with me seeing other people in the meantime. I only did it once and I didn't enjoy it. And dating a celebrity has its bonuses though. She paid for almost everything, went on some fun trips, etc. Wouldn't really recommend it to anyone out there though for the long term. I'm mid-20s right now, and from what I saw, every celebrity in that age range is basically cheating 24/7. Edit. Just to answer some questions I've gotten in DMs, how did you two meet? Her brother was one of my best friends in college. After senior year, summer of 2017, a bunch of our friends went on a trip. His sister came along because she was missing out on the whole college experience thing. Why did it end? Mostly the cheating. You try waking up and seeing an article that your girlfriend is banging some dude, then texting her in the morning. It was just a bit too much for me to handle. Did you meet any other celebrities? No, not really. She very much tried to keep me out of her celebrity life. Was she normal to hang out with? Like, was the fame noticeable? Well, as normal as it could get. She's a super nice gal. I really don't have anything bad to say about her. You could claim the cheating was bad, but she was very point blank with me about it from the start. Really, only myself to blame for that. She said she liked being with me because everything else she does is very much for show, and being herself was a lot easier. Next story. I dated a celebrity who was a big deal in her genre, but nobody else has probably ever heard of her. It was really nice being moved to the front of the line and having great seats wherever we went. I honestly couldn't deal with all of the attention she got all the time. She had beautiful women throwing themselves at her, messing with her hair and clothes, touching her. I felt like I could never compete, and she could sleep with any one of them whenever she felt like it. Plus, she had to be the center of attention. If she wasn't getting enough attention, she would create a scene. I also eventually noticed that she wouldn't let on that we were dating. She always said she was single, so that's why she had all these women coming on to her everywhere we went. It felt like a game, and I didn't want to play it. After we broke up, she started dating a jazz musician who thought she was more popular than she actually was. It was very comical seeing them out in public together, trying to see who could get the most attention. I was amazed, though, that they could get both of their big fat heads in the same car. Next story. When I lived in Ireland, a girl I went to college with dated David Tennant for a bit. Said he was super sweet. Then, this one's current, so I'm not naming names, a coworker/mentor is besties with a group of Broadway stars, several of whom are now big-name movie and TV stars. He knew them before their rise to stardom. He and one of the stars jokingly flirt with each other, but honestly, they'd make such a gorgeous couple that I wish it weren't a joke. I'm waiting for the day I get the news of their engagement. Next story. Not a dating story, but I still find it memorable. I grew up without a TV, so I never watched movies as a kid. One year when I was 12, I went to a summer camp and became good friends with a girl for the duration of the camp. One day she goes, "My dad is an actor. His name is Paul Walker." And I was like, cool, I don't watch movies, so I don't know who that is. And we continued playing. We stayed in touch until a few years later when her dad passed away, which was when I realized who he was. Rest in peace, legend. Next story. Not me, but my uncle dated the singer Pink in high school for a little while. They went to Central Bucks in Pennsylvania. Pretty neat fun fact, but it always feels a little awkward when someone brings it up at gatherings because he's happily married now. This is also why I don't have any stories to share. But apparently, she was super chill and down to earth. My uncle was the type of kid to create napalm in his backyard and set the neighbor's pool on fire, etc. So I've always imagined she probably acted similar at the time, but I could be way wrong. Next story. So I've got 3 stories. The first story is mine, and it's not really that dramatic. A couple of years ago, I met a guy who was the lead singer of a band at a local show. The venue was kind of crappy, it was a big storage unit that had been converted, and the other bands weren't too great, but his band was headlining the show. They played their set and then were standing around drinking with everyone who had come, probably like 30 people. I walked up to him and told him I'd really enjoyed their set, and we ended up talking for about an hour. We continued texting for about 4 or 5 months, never really dated, but we enjoyed each other. Then his band just got signed and released their first album, and he's dating a girl who seems to be really sweet. Plus, I'm still friends with him on Facebook, and he recently changed his name and privacy settings, so I feel a little cool about him keeping me on his friends list. Then the second story is pretty much the same, but it's about my little sister. She moved up to Nashville a couple of years ago for school and met an up-and-coming musician. They hooked up a few times, but eventually called it quits because he's a couple years older than her and wanted her to be able to enjoy college without getting wrapped up in him. Quality guy, and his albums are pretty good. And the third story is about my mom, who went to an Allman Brothers show in like 79 or 80, which would have made her 20 or 21 at the time. She told me that she didn't really know who they were, but her friend had asked her to go, so she went. So after the show, she's standing outside smoking, and this guy walks up behind her and taps her on the shoulder. She says that he said, "You're gonna come home with me tonight," or something along those lines that's equally parts creepy and pompous, and my mom goes, no, I'm not," then turns back around to her friend, who is apparently awestruck, and mom doesn't know why. So the guy steps around and is like, "Don't you know who I am?" And my mom goes, "No, and I really don't want to." Then she drops her cigarette and stamps it out and grabs her friend and goes to the bar. Anyways, apparently that was Greg Allman. She told me that story a few years ago and I lost my mind. At one point I even said, "Mom, I could have been his kid." And then she laughed and told me not to tell Dad. So those are the things that kind of fit here, I think. Next story. Gonna get buried, but I dated someone in high school who is now famous as a musician. He was very cool, but he was not a good boyfriend. He was always trying to hang out with older, cooler people and was not very nice to me in public. But in private, he was very sweet and confessed to me a lot of insecurities and frustrations. He cheated on me a ton of times and we broke up in college though. In hindsight, he had a very strong sense of who he wanted to be and how he wanted to be perceived, and pursued it relentlessly. And I'm sure that is part of why he's successful. He got divorced recently and sent me some flirty text messages out of the blue, but I ignored them because I'm a happily married, normal person. Next story. I went on 2 dates with a Z-list celebrity from a reality show a few years ago. Think famous enough to where they have a bit of a social media following, non-famous enough to be recognized in public most of the time. First date, it was okay. We got coffee and dinner, chatted a bit. He texted me later asking if I was going to hang out again sometime, and I agreed. So we went out for dinner a second time. He got to the restaurant a few minutes, like less than 15 minutes before I did, and got kind of an attitude about making him wait for me. Other than that, dinner was okay. He later texted me saying he'd like to go out again if I wanted to do anything other than get a free meal. And I was kind of taken aback by his comment, and we just kind of slow faded as far as the texting went. But I just didn't really like his attitude. He was pompous and entitled. He seemed to think he was more famous than he actually was. He wasn't even really a main cast member on his show. And then he would randomly text me when he would be in this area for like a couple of years after that, but I never really spoke to him again. It's not really that interesting of a story. I'm not revealing who it was to protect my own anonymity. I've told a few people I know in real life about this, and I try not to post identifying stuff on Reddit, but most people wouldn't even have heard of him anyway. Alright, y'all, so I started watching Love is Blind recently. I got a clip on Instagram, and I said, wow, this is ridiculous, I want more. So I watched the first season.
And even though it probably doesn't overlap, and it's most likely not the first person, I think it's Mark from season 1 of Love is Blind. Oh, wait, actually, no, wait. I think it's the redheaded guy, Damien. It's Damien from season 1 of Love is Blind. Totally checks out. I hated him by the final episode. Anyway, next story.
So, my mom went on a few dates with Ted Cruz in college. They were both in college, Republicans at different schools, and met at the '94 RNC. She ended up not calling him back after a few dates because she said he always talked like he was giving a speech. But apparently, he was planning on running for president even back then in his 20s. Next story. I dated an international athlete, won't mention names. He complained about the distance relationship he had with his mother on every date we had. Then he cried about it after we had sex. After the 4th time, I was like, F this is so weird, I'm out. I was then barraged with drunken, slobbery calls and messages accusing me of being just like her.
And it sucks though, because he was an effing awesome lay.
Next story. My sweet Nana, who typically only has nice things to say about anyone, was once set up on a date with Chuck Norris through a friend of her cousin. My siblings and I found out shortly after the wide circulation of Chuck Norris facts started, so we couldn't wait to get the details. And she told us, he was a lovely man, but honestly, a bit of a bore. Next story. I married the lead singer of my favorite band. The band is only moderately popular in the US now, but the band he fronted in the late 90s is apparently still pretty popular in Europe. He's down to earth, unassuming, humble, and dating him was always so much fun. I'm an artist as well, and he helped me out at a convention not long after we got serious, and he drew such a crowd, the organizers asked him to put a costume on for the next day because the crowding in the aisle was causing safety issues. Other than that stuff, though, life is fairly normal. Next story. I have 2, crazily enough, both forever ago. One, a musician, nearly married the guy. In private, he was super chill, fun, loved doing things with me and my kid, kinda dorky and sweet, average guy. When we were out, someone would come up to him and he acted so different, like he flipped a switch and was acting like the smooth, cool guy. Then found out he was cheating. Told me it was just part of the job. He had a top song on the billboards when we broke up, and it was so popular I couldn't go anywhere without that song coming on and instantly getting pissed off. We're friends now, and we do keep in touch. Recently saw him when he was touring in my city and invited me and a friend to see them perform. Then, the other guy was normal enough, down to earth and very sweet. Only saw him for a bit before finding out he was a part of a very high-profile case for a financial crime. And last time I saw him, he told me he was probably going to prison. 2 weeks later, he was on national news. Since then, I've seen a documentary involving it, and every once in a while, I'll see it mentioned on a crime show. I met the musician in a bar, met the second guy through online dating. And then another guy, not sure he counts, I'm not into political news, but if someone is into that, they might know him. He's often one of those expert opinion guys they have on CNN. Didn't last long though, only one date. He was sleazy and kept asking for nude pictures. Met him while out for dinner with friends, and he asked for my number when I was on my way to the bathroom. Next story. So, she may not be a celebrity to you, but she is to me. I dated a scientist at the forefront of HIV research. She once canceled a date with me because her team was invited to a Nobel laureates conference and had to leave for Germany the next morning. She knew it sounded ridiculous or even fake, but she assured me it really was happening. And sure enough, the website for the event was posting pictures of the various panels and galas, and there she was in the audience. Unfortunately, I couldn't handle the fact that this person in front of me might be interested in me. I couldn't believe it, and it colored our future dates. My questions became less about her and her life and became all about her research and research techniques, as well as the amazingly talented people around her. She would eventually stop talking to me and move on. And I really wish I could have at least pretended she was in my league, and also better shown I was interested in her, and maybe tried harder to show how interesting I am, that I have potential. So, Dr. Jones, if you're reading this, I would be very, very surprised if you are single. You're beautiful, talented, funny, and intimidatingly smart. Should you be available, though, hit me up. Next story. I didn't date, but slept with Amber Heard a couple of times in high school. She was nice, a little quiet, liked to drink and chill, but she always said weird things like, "I'm gonna be famous one day, wait and see." And we would laugh. Well, look who's laughing now, I guess. She was a private school girl that would hang out with us public schoolers on weekends. She was fun. Next story. I dated a fairly famous director. I was working as a production assistant on one of his films, and he singled me out, walked up to me and asked me out. A PA is literally the lowest person on the food chain on a movie production, so of course I was going to say yes to the effing director who asked me out. And so we ended up going out to dinner once, after which he left me a key to his hotel room, and well, whatever you imagine from there actually happened. Then it was near Thanksgiving, and he wasn't going home to LA over the short break, so he came and had dinner with my family for Thanksgiving. After the production ended and he left town, I emailed him a few times, but honestly, we had nothing in common. And he was ugly, a Woody Allen-looking dude. He's more famous now than he was then, though I wouldn't necessarily call him a celebrity because 99% of you wouldn't recognize him if you saw him, but you'd know his name, and it isn't hard to figure it out from what I've said. To be honest, he was a total a-hole, and had I not been 19 at the time, I'd have laughed in his face. Next story. I dated a girl that's now a famous YouTuber for a little over 7 months. Not a celebrity per se, but famous enough that people knew who she was. She does vlogs and just goofy stuff, but now has around 8.5 million subscribers on YouTube. She was really nice, but YouTube just consumed her life. She had dropped out of high school a couple of months before I met her just to pursue streaming. We're both pretty young, still under 20, and I wanted to be a normal teenager and not caught up in her lifestyle. It was insane to me, and honestly made me really uncomfortable when people would approach us when we were out on a date or just hanging out. They would be pushy and rude and actually grab her and try to hug her. One time, there was even a reporter from a magazine who would just follow us around even when we asked her to leave us alone. Just really uncomfortable all around. We broke it off when I left California with my family, and we still talk occasionally, but she's always busy with content and that super fast-paced lifestyle. Next story. Many years ago, Shuffle's walking fame, I dated a guy who had an uncanny resemblance to a popular local TV movie and theater actor. New Zealand is a pretty small place, so it isn't unusual to run into celebrities from time to time. Occasionally, he'd get girls freaking out from a distance and running up, only for them to die of shame when they got closer. I imagine he got pretty good mileage out of this when I wasn't around, so I kept him on a pretty tight leash. Next story. I went to high school and had a will they, won't they relationship with a girl who ended up as a Playboy centerfold. We never did actually date. She was surprisingly dorky and needy and insecure for as good looking as she was, but it was kind of a turnoff. Next story. Not sure if this counts because the guy I dated wasn't like A-list famous, but was famous enough that their band has a large following. They toured overseas as well as around the US. Nothing crazy ever happened. Sometimes we'd be out and someone would recognize him and ask for a selfie, and then would stand around and make small talk. He'd also be gone for long stretches of time while they're touring, and we're not together anymore, but we're still friendly. Chat on Instagram or via text every now and then. Overall, it wasn't unlike dating someone non-famous, just more conversations with random strangers when you're out. We didn't have paparazzi stalking his every move or anything. Next story. I had a friend that went on a date with an Academy Award-winning actress. A friend of a friend made the initial contact, and then he took it from there. The idiot, man, he was way out of his league. He told me at one point he started talking about how manure is actually a good word. Anyway, it didn't go anywhere as it inevitably came up that my friend was engaged and was pursuing the actress despite this. She punched him and left him on a park bench. Next story. I dated a girl who was in my country's The Voice, and after that, she won a big international festival. Didn't go very well. She's kind of a diva, and I also have a big ego, so we collided. One day after a party, we returned home, and she was obviously mad. I asked her what happened, and she said she didn't feel appreciated that night. I've been talking to other people, and she wasn't the center of attention. We broke up that same night, but we're currently friends. Next story. Oh, okay. Although not technically a date, I did spend time with Katy Perry before fame. She was playing Warped Tour right before I Kissed a Girl came out, so she was not recognizable. Anywho, I was chilling by one of the large fans to cool off when this dark-haired girl came up and asked me why I was alone. We hung out for like 10 minutes talking about random crap. Then she told me to come see her band. Unfortunately, my brother wanted to leave early. Fortunately, the exit was past the side stage, which she was playing as we left. I noticed her phenomenal stage presence, and when she sang the titular song, I Kissed a Girl, I thought it was funny, but nothing more. A few months later, it was everywhere.
Does OP realize what he could have prevented? He could have stopped Katy Perry that we have now. She could have stopped the Justin Trudeau thing, the Russell Brand thing. She didn't go to space. We could possibly be living in a better timeline if OP's brother didn't want to leave. Okay, you stand there, you listen to the song, then you go backstage and say, I would like to speak to the top-heavy woman with dark hair, and you change history. But OP flopped. He foiled. He folded. That's the term. Anyway, next story.
So, this will probably be buried, but F it. Created a throwaway for this, but I'm actually dating one right now. Have been for a while. And it's a lot harder, especially when it's still a secret. Ours still is. I do imagine it'd be harder if the news broke, though. You have to sneak around, lie to most of your family, especially your younger relatives in my case, that might know them, about who you're dating. You can't really post photos of yourself and them, or you have the possibility of it getting leaked. It's also extremely hard to go on dates, if you ever can, because there's always the chance of them being recognized. Then, not to mention the time zone differences at times and the long distances where you don't see or talk to them because they're either busy, in a totally different time zone, or traveling. Now, bear in mind, the person I'm dating is from a different country than America, where celebrity status is held to a different standard than it is here. So this may be a unique experience compared to other people in the thread, but I figured this would be some good insight as well. Next story. I'm going to make this as short as possible. I had matched up with this woman on some website. We talked for a while through text or whatever. Didn't put much weight into it. Talked for about 2 or 3 weeks. She invites me over to her house. Turns out it was a mansion. She said she will cook dinner. Cool. She invites me in. Remember, huge house, and it's completely empty except for a couch and a desk with a computer in the living room. No photos, nothing on the wall, completely empty except for those items. I wasn't even sure what she was to cook with because I could only assume there was also nothing in the kitchen too. Well, she's in the kitchen. I ask her because it's awkward sitting in an empty room by yourself, and I say, "Can I play some music?" And she says, "Sure, I've got some on my computer." I go into the music folder, and there's all these files that I got no idea what they are. I'm curious though, so I double-click one. Well, unbeknownst to me, apparently she had been really rocking out previously that day because the speakers were already full blast. So I got the computer playing as loud as it possibly could. The only problem though was that what I had clicked on was not music at all. It started at the crotch of a woman getting, So, since the speakers were up full blast, my date heard from the kitchen and came sprinting down the quarter-mile-long hallway, felt slow-mo. Imagine it in slow motion. My eyes move back to the screen as this very intense ritual is still in play. My date is running and yelling, "No!" And the screen is moving up as the scene progresses, and she says, "No, stop!" I'm like, "Yo, chill, I've seen this stuff before, all good. You're not perverting my young virgin mind." And she says, "No, there's something I didn't tell you." And as the camera had been panning up, I realized it was her. I looked at her, and she says, "I make adult movies." And she cooked me fish, mashed potatoes, and asparagus. Meal was good, had work in the morning. And she said, "If you stay, I'll make it worth your while." And I slept well. So, everybody, any relevant stories you want to share in the comments, y'all? Anyone have dated any celebrities or popular figures? I have not dated anyone famous, unfortunately. I don't know if I want to. I barely get dates as is, I'm going to be honest with you. So a famous person? I don't think so. Maybe if Undersparked continues to blow up and I voice act in more stuff, I will be the famous person. And then I can date myself. But to be honest, that sounds incredibly depressing, and I hope that is not the case. And then maybe I'll get some weirdos in my DMs. That's how you really know you've made it. But anyway, guys, we're at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting, and have a good one.